everyone, I'm Kudzie Nicolle Mapiye and welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a bit of a different video. Today I'm going to be talking about life in Australia. I've lived in Australia for the last 13 years and just wanted to do this video for anyone who's curious about life in Australia, anyone who's, wanting to migrate or just wants to know, what's life like down under. So I've got a few things that I would like to share with you that are like the things that jump out the most for me about life in Australia. And I'm just going to start with the very first day I landed in Australia. I remember it was in February and it was raining. It was I'd come for my uni and I stayed in this place overnight while I waited to go to my accommodation. And I remember the first morning in Australia, I went to my window and I opened the window to see what was outside because I had arrived in the evening. So I wanted to see what's Australia like, when the sun's out. Wanted to kind of get, a feeling of what's the atmosphere like. So I opened my window and I tell you, I must have stayed like out the window for about 30 minutes straight. I was so fascinated by what I saw. And what I saw was there was construction happening right across from the place that I was staying. And so I was coming from Zimbabwe, and construction work is usually low income work. So it's done by usually predominantly black low income workers. So I open the window, I see this construction taking place, and everyone there is white. Like, that was the biggest shock. I was like, wow, like, this is different. And not only did that surprise me, I think what surprised me even more was there didn't seem to be someone actively supervising them, but everyone was working so hard. I could tell like everyone was so focused. For the time I was staring out the window, everyone was so focused on their job. Everyone was working hard. They were sweating, and I was like, wow, like I could see, you could actually like sense the work ethic for someone who was new like me, new to this society. Like, it was so easy to tell what a strong work ethic Australians had, and I was so impressed. And that was my first ever memory of Australia, and I was just like, wow, I wonder what I'm going to see next and what I'm going to experience next. And throughout all the jobs that I've done here in Australia, one thing that has always stood out is the Australian work ethic is the strongest I personally have ever witnessed. Anywhere I've gone since I grew up living in Zimbabwe, this has to be the strongest work ethic. And I think it's something that's very, very positive about Australia and something that I admire about Australians. And also the fact that anyone can do any job. In some countries it's like only this race does these kind of jobs, or this is not jobs for white people or black people. In Australia, anyone can do anything from plumbing to gardening to corporate jobs to construction work. You see a mixture of races. It's not predominantly one race who does one thing, and I think that's something very positive. And the second thing about Australia that I found fascinating was, I remember in my first week of orientation at uni, I was expecting, when they're saying orientation, they're telling us about what the campus looks like and where to find things. That's what I was expecting. But I remember I walked into this orientation session, and one of the first things the guy who was presenting said was, there are sharks in Australia. I was like, wow, seriously? But I understand now what he meant. Australia has a lot of dangerous creatures. I mean, the beaches have sharks, but snakes, spiders, all the dangerous, creepy, crawly things that you can think of can be found in Australia. And snakes are something that you can expect to see when you live in Australia, and to just make them part of everyday life. So it's something that, I'm still coming to terms with. And every time before I go and sit in my backyard, I have to scan, like, because I've got, a brick wall. I have to scan a stone wall, I mean, and snakes can hide in there. So I always scan to see, are there any snakes around? And I always have a snake escape plan in my head. Like, if I see a snake, like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to run? Do I have like an escape route? Like, that's how bad it is, at least for me, when it comes to snakes, because there are a lot of snakes here in Australia. And the other thing that is interesting about life in Australia is the fact that, when I first heard about Australia, everything that I had known about this country before actually moving here was from the TV series Skippy the Bush Kangaroo. And it was all about bushland, a kangaroo, like people who were kind of living like, that really, bush lifestyle. And I thought that's what Australia was made up of, like a lot of bushland and a lot of, bush kind of living. And I was very surprised that it was very modern, just like any developed country that and there is bushland, and there are certain areas that do have a lot of bushland. But what I found interesting is how people, whenever they found, like, I obviously look like I'm from Africa, so people would obviously come to me and say, oh, so, ask me these weird questions like, so, are there like elephants and like lions just walking around in Africa? And I'll be like, oh, no, but in Australia, I have seen kangaroos. Like, actually, in my street where I live now, a few months ago, I saw a kangaroo hopping like 50 meters from my house. Like, I was just like, wow, you're more likely to bump into a kangaroo in the street in Australia than you are to bump into a lion or an elephant in Africa. So, kangaroos can be found, in, especially like, this is a new like area, like new builds. So it used to be a lot of bushland, so kangaroos still kind of hop around here and there. So yeah, I found it interesting that you can actually see kangaroos in just suburban streets hopping around doing their thing. I found that was very, very interesting. And the other thing that kind of hit me first up when I moved to Australia is how expensive things were in Australia. I remember when I left my sister in Zimbabwe, I would say, I'm gonna send you all the cosmetics, I'm gonna send you so many things from Australia, because I was assuming that things are cheaper overseas. And I went into the shops and I was just like, wow, like everything is expensive. Like, food products, I found everything to be quite expensive, especially for a student, which I was at the time. Like, I just found things to be so expensive. But when I started working, I started to see that people get paid, I think, a little bit more than other countries, so it kind of balances out. But if you are ever curious about staying in Australia or even coming to holiday in Australia, one thing that you should definitely expect is that accommodation is high. Whatever, if you're gonna go shopping for clothes, if you're gonna go shopping for groceries, almost everything here is very highly priced. And that is something that I've just gotten used to over time. But I must say, it was not the best things about this country. So it is quite an expensive country. And the last thing that I found about Australia is something that it's very interesting. I remember when I went out for the first time in Australia as a student, we went to this place, and they were playing music. And my friend took me, and I was expecting, like, in Zimbabwe, they've got the latest music, whatever. It was going to be, very upbeat, very, what, you just expect a good night out to be. And we walked into one of these clubs, and I remember, like, it was a very kind of chilled vibe. But one of the first songs that I heard just shook me. Like, I was like, what? And they were playing Billie Jean, like, Michael Jackson Billie Jean. And it wasn't a remix, it was like the OG version Billie Jean. And I remember people just flocking to the dance floor, people just doing these like wicked dance moves and really getting into Billie Jean. And I was like, you have to be kidding me. Like, seriously, they're playing Billie Jean. But one thing about Australia is it is very laid back and not really on trend with a lot of things like fashion, music, movies, anything. I found like in Zimbabwe, when something comes out, when a new song comes out, you could hear it everywhere and everyone was kind of into it. But Australia is kind of like, you know, a bit more laid back, like they're not really into trend that much, even fashion. And I noticed that people don't dress up a lot. They've got very relaxed, casual kind of, you know, clothing that they wear, and even work, like even at a corporate job, it's mostly like your corporate wear is not too out there. It's just, you know, a simple corporate looking top and maybe a corporate looking skirt and flat shoes. Like, it's nothing too out there. And if you actually do dress up like professionals do in places like, you know, Zimbabwe or other places, people will actually ask like, are you going for an interview? Because it's not the normal thing to do around here. Like, people don't usually dress up. So one thing I have learned to do in Australia is to really dress down, and, you know, just to, you know, and even in the shops, you find most of the clothing is very, you know, suited to the culture here, which is very laid back, nothing too loud, nothing too out there, you know. And, you know, people don't really do, you know, the whole dressing up with the high heels and doing all that. So it's very relaxed, which is good and bad, because sometimes you just do want to go all out and dress out, and, you know, when you're going to work, but you don't necessarily want all the attention and the curiosity that you're gonna get from people, like, what's going on, why are you dressed like that? So yeah, I've learned to be a lot more, you know, toned down in my dressing. So yeah, if you are ever thinking about moving to Australia and you really like dressing up, do be prepared to have a lot of attention on you if, you know, you don't kind of tone down your dressing. But yeah, that's one of the things that I just found very interesting about Australia. So, you know, that's the few things that I wanted to share with you guys about life in Australia. But yeah, basically it's, I really enjoy life in Australia. I really enjoy, you know, the climate where I live in Queensland is very sunny. It's, you know, very warm, just very friendly, very, you know, laid back, family oriented, and I really enjoy it. And if you are, you know, curious, have any other specific questions that you'd like to ask, please put them down in the comments. Yeah, and I'll see you in the next video.